Hey everyone, welcome in. You know, International Women's Day 2025 is right around the corner, and we are so ready for it.
Absolutely.
We're going deep on this fascinating report, International Women's Day 2025, Rights, Equality, Empowerment.
Such an important topic.
It is, and one of the things that really blew my mind in this report was that we're still looking at something like another 100 years before we actually reach total gender parity.
Yeah, it is a stark reminder,
Yeah.
We've made progress, but that journey to full equality, it's far from over.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah. But before we dive into, the 2025 landscape, I think it's really key to understand how we even got here. Like, how did International Women's Day become this global phenomenon? You know what I mean?
Totally. I love a good origin story. So give me the historical background. How did we go from like marches for voting rights to this global celebration of women?
Okay, well, picture it. Early 1900s, right? The world is industrializing like crazy. Women, they're entering the workforce in record numbers. But the conditions are brutal, wages are low, and they're pretty much shut out of the political process. So this sparks all these labor movements with women right at the front, demanding better working conditions and the right to vote.
So these early labor movements, these were like the seeds of International Women's Day.
Exactly. In 1910, there was this German socialist, Clara Zetkin. She proposed the idea of an International Women's Day at a conference in Copenhagen. The idea was to have a dedicated day to really push for women's rights and build global solidarity. And so the very first IWD was actually observed the next year in Austria, Denmark, Germany, and Switzerland. And from there, it just took off.
Wow. That's incredible. It's like activism just spreading across the world.
It really is. It shows the power of collective action. Even small events, they can have a ripple effect. But the interesting part is how IWD transitioned from primarily a socialist movement event to, well, a more globally recognized and celebrated occasion.
Okay, yeah. How did that happen? Was it a gradual shift or was there like a defining moment?
I wouldn't say there was one singular event, but rather a kind of evolution, influenced by, well, a lot of factors. As the women's suffrage movement gained momentum, more countries gave women the right to vote, and IWD started attracting broader support. And then in 1975, the UN officially recognized International Women's Day,
Yeah.
really solidifying its global status.
So it sounds like as those early milestones like voting rights, were achieved, it helped IWD become more inclusive, break free of just those socialist roots and become a worldwide celebration.
You got it. And that brings us to right now, to IWD 2025. And this year's theme is, for all women and girls, rights, equality, empowerment.
Love that.
It's a real call for inclusivity, recognizing that the fight for equality, it has to benefit every woman and girl, no matter her background.
Yeah. I really appreciate how that theme acknowledges that there's still so much work to be done while also celebrating how far we've come.
Right, exactly. And one of the key things the report highlights is this need to move beyond just talking. Like, we have to focus on actually doing something, concrete actions to dismantle those systemic barriers. You know what I mean?
It's time to walk the walk.
Absolutely. The report urges, a shift from awareness to action. It calls for tangible changes in policies, investments, even societal norms. So specifically, it emphasizes policy changes that, things like promote equal pay, affordable child care, and parental leave. These kinds of policies, they don't just support women, they create a more equitable and productive society overall.
It just makes sense. It's not just about fairness. It's about a system that actually works for everyone.
Right. And it's about recognizing how connected all these issues are.
Yeah.
So, for instance, the report dives into this urgent need to invest in women's education and economic empowerment.
Because when you educate a woman, you empower her community, right?
Precisely. The report argues that giving girls quality education and women equal access to economic opportunities, it has this ripple effect. It leads to, better health outcomes, less poverty, and increased well-being overall. It's not just a moral imperative, it's an economic and social one.
Okay, so we're talking about these big concepts, rights, equality, empowerment. How does the report suggest we actually make those things happen? What does that look like in real life?
One of the key areas it really emphasizes is challenging discriminatory norms. Think about all those ingrained beliefs and societal expectations that limit women's choices and opportunities, right? Things like, the pressure to prioritize family over career or the persistent gender pay gap. These are all examples of norms that need to be challenged and dismantled.
It's like unpacking decades, centuries even, of ingrained biases. It's a lot.
You're absolutely right. And it's crucial to remember this is global. The fight for gender equality needs international collaboration and solidarity.
I'm getting fired up just thinking about all the ways we can contribute.
Me too. And on that note, I think it's a great place to pause.
We'll dive deeper into some specific actions and really inspiring stories in the next part of our deep dive, so stay tuned.
Welcome back. One thing I'm really eager to unpack from this report is this idea of women's health. It's not just a human right, but also a major economic driver.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. I know we touched on health briefly in the last part, but I'm ready to go deeper. How exactly does the report connect women's health with economic opportunity? It does feel like those two things are treated as separate issues a lot of the time.
It's true. For way too long, discussions about women's health have been stuck in that healthcare box,
Yeah.
focusing mainly on reproductive health or maternal care. But this report takes a much broader view. It argues that a woman's well-being, her physical, mental, social well-being, is totally connected to her ability to participate in society and contribute to the economy.
So it's not just about having access to hospitals or doctors, but also about being healthy enough to really thrive in all areas of life.
Exactly. Think about it. Imagine a woman who's constantly dealing with a preventable illness or struggling with her mental health. It's going to be so much harder for her to reach her full potential, whether that's in education, at work, or even in her family.
That's a good point. When we talk about empowering women, we can't just focus on external things like education or jobs. We also have to deal with those health issues that can really hold them back.
Absolutely. And the report highlights a few specific areas where we really need to see progress. For example, the maternal mortality rate in so many parts of the world is still alarmingly high.
It is tragic to think that women are still dying from preventable complications during pregnancy and childbirth in this day and age.
It's not just a human tragedy, it's a massive economic loss, too. When a mother dies, it has this devastating impact on her family and community, often trapping them in a cycle of poverty. The report argues that investing in maternal health care, well, it not only saves lives, it also strengthens economies.
It's like this ripple effect, right? Investing in women's health creates a positive impact that benefits everyone.
Exactly. And it's not just physical health either. The report really stresses mental health, too. Women are disproportionately affected by things like depression and anxiety, which often stem from societal pressures and, unfortunately, gender-based violence.
So we're really talking about a web of interconnected issues. Physical health, mental health, economic opportunities, and social expectations. It's complex.
It really is. And that's why the report pushes for a holistic approach to women's health, one that takes all these factors into account.
Okay, I'm following. So what would that holistic approach look like in practice? Are there any specific examples?
Well, one key thing is ensuring that all women have access to quality health care, no matter their income, location, or social status. And we're not just talking about basic medical care, but also things like mental health support and reproductive health care.
Right, because those are often the first services to get cut, especially in marginalized communities.
Exactly. And the report also talks about amplifying women's voices in healthcare decision-making. For too long, women have been left out of those conversations, even though they're the ones using healthcare services the most.
It's about letting women have control over their own bodies and health choices, right?
Exactly. It's about recognizing women as experts in their own experiences and making sure their perspectives are part of policies and programs.
That makes me think about what we discussed earlier, challenging those discriminatory norms. A lot of those norms are really deeply rooted in healthcare systems, too.
Absolutely right. Think about, the stigma around menstruation or menopause, or how often women's pain is just dismissed by healthcare providers. These are all examples of how those norms can impact women's health.
So it's not just about providing services, it's about changing the entire healthcare culture to be more inclusive and responsive to women's needs.
Precisely. The report also focuses on another crucial aspect of women's health, safeguarding their bodily autonomy. That means access to things like safe and legal abortion, contraception, and comprehensive sex education.
I know those can be tough topics to talk about, but the report frames them as vital for women's empowerment.
Absolutely. The report argues that when women have control over their reproductive choices, it empowers them. They have more agency over their lives and can make informed decisions about their education, careers, and families.
So we've talked about a lot of the challenges and areas where we need to improve, but are there any successes highlighted in the report? What are some of the bright spots?
There are definitely bright spots. One of the most encouraging trends is the rising number of women and girls pursuing STEM careers, science, technology, engineering, and math.
That's great to hear. Those fields have always been male-dominated, so it's exciting to see more women breaking those barriers.
It is. The report credits this to a few things: increased access to education, mentorship programs for girls, and, well, a growing awareness that diversity in STEM is really important.
I love it. It's like we're finally tapping into this incredible pool of female talent. What kind of impact is that having on the STEM fields themselves?
Well, studies have actually shown that diverse teams are more innovative and productive. So having more women in STEM is leading to breakthroughs in research, tech, and engineering. And it's also inspiring a new generation of girls, helping them see themselves in these fields. It's a really positive cycle.
It's all about breaking down stereotypes and showing girls that they can be anything they set their minds to.
Exactly. And it's not just about encouraging them to pursue STEM, it's also about making sure they have the support they need to succeed once they're there. The report emphasizes things like addressing gender bias in hiring, promoting women, and creating a more inclusive work environment.
It's like we're building this whole support system from education and mentorship to workplace culture. It's about creating a world where women can thrive in their STEM careers.
You got it. And it's not just STEM. It's about encouraging women to pursue whatever they're passionate about, whether that's the arts, business, politics, anything.
This is making me think about the importance of role models. When girls see women succeeding in fields that are traditionally dominated by men, it really broadens their horizons.
Absolutely. That's why the report focuses on the importance of highlighting the achievements of women, leaders, innovators, and changemakers. It's all about showcasing those success stories to inspire the next generation.
We could honestly talk about amazing women for hours, but we do still have more to cover in this report.
You're right. One more topic that really stands out is technology. It's playing a huge role in both promoting and, unfortunately, hindering gender equality. It's a complex issue with so much potential, but also some real risks.
Okay, so let's talk about the digital world. We touched on digital equality earlier, but I'm ready to dive deeper. What are some of the key points from the report?
The report really highlights the potential of technology to empower women and girls, especially in things like education, entrepreneurship, and accessing information. Think about a young woman in a remote village who can suddenly connect with mentors and learn new things online.
It's like technology can break down geographical barriers and create these opportunities that didn't even exist a few decades ago.
Exactly. And it's not just about access to information. It's about giving women the skills they need to thrive in a digital economy. The report really pushes for digital literacy programs and opportunities for women to pursue tech careers.
So it's about bridging that digital gender divide. Women should be creating and innovating with technology, not just consuming it.
Exactly. And the report gives some great examples of women who are leading the way in tech, developing apps, starting businesses, and using their skills to solve real problems.
It's inspiring to see women at the forefront of the digital revolution, but I also know there are downsides to the story.
You're right, unfortunately. The report doesn't shy away from addressing the challenges that women face online, things like online harassment and abuse. Women are targeted way more often with things like cyberbullying, stalking, and threats of violence. And a lot of times, it's just for speaking their minds or being visible online.
It's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Technology can be so empowering, but it can also be this breeding ground for hate.
It's true. It's complex. The report recommends a multifaceted approach to deal with it. One key part is holding social media platforms accountable. They need to create safer online environments. That means stronger policies against harassment, better content moderation, and more tools for users to protect themselves.
I'm sure it's also about changing how we communicate online in general, encouraging respect instead of hiding behind anonymity to be aggressive.
Absolutely. It's about a shared responsibility for creating a respectful and inclusive online world.
Okay, so we've covered the digital landscape, both the good and the bad, but there's something we haven't really talked about yet: pushback. Resistance to the movement for gender equality.
You're right. We can't talk about IWD without addressing the opposition. The report actually dedicates a whole section to this backlash against feminism and the whole movement for gender equality, and it's honestly a bit concerning.
It feels like we've seen this resurgence of anti-feminist sentiment lately. Why is that happening? What's driving this backlash?
The report points to a few things. One is the rise of these populist movements globally. They often use rhetoric that demonizes feminism, framing it as this threat to traditional values and family structures.
It's like they're saying that women's empowerment is a bad thing for men, which just creates this false divide.
You got it. And that kind of rhetoric spreads really fast online, especially in those echo chambers and with social media algorithms that prioritize engagement over accuracy. So misinformation about feminism is everywhere, and it really polarizes the whole conversation.
This backlash feels like it's rooted in fear. Fear of change, fear of losing power and privilege.
The report reflects that sentiment. It's about power dynamics. When women start gaining rights and visibility, the people who benefit from the status quo often feel threatened, so they react defensively. And that plays out in a lot of ways, from online harassment to attempts to roll back progress on women's rights.
So how do we move forward with all this pushback? How do we keep making progress when there's so much resistance?
The report emphasizes the importance of building coalitions and finding common ground. It suggests that we need to frame gender equality as something that benefits everyone, not a competition where one side wins and the other loses. That's how we'll start winning people over.
So highlighting how gender equality is good for men, women, and society as a whole.
Exactly. And the report actually gives specific examples of how to do this. For instance, if you focus on the economic benefits of closing the gender pay gap, like increased productivity and innovation, you might reach people who don't really care about the moral arguments.
It's about finding the right arguments for each audience, showing them that gender equality isn't just the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do as well.
And it's about actively challenging those harmful narratives, the stereotypes, and misinformation. The report suggests more media literacy programs, to give people the tools to think critically about the information they see and recognize bias.
We need to fight back, not just with facts and logic, but also with powerful stories that showcase the positive impact of gender equality.
Yes, and that actually leads perfectly into the next section, which focuses on amplifying women's voices and stories.
I'm all ears. What does the report say about the power of storytelling?
It argues that personal stories can really break down stereotypes, challenge those assumptions and create empathy in a way that just facts and figures can't.
It makes sense. Those personal stories make these issues feel real and relatable, and that helps people connect on a deeper level.
Exactly. And the report highlights several initiatives that are using storytelling to promote gender equality around the world. For example, there's this project in Kenya that trains young women to use filmmaking to document their own experiences and challenge those harmful cultural norms.
That's so cool. It's all about giving women the power to tell their own stories.
And it's not just individual stories, it's also about creating platforms where women can connect and build solidarity. The report highlights the importance of women's media, feminist blogs, and podcasts. They create these spaces for women to share their perspectives and challenge the status quo, building this amazing sense of community.
It's like building this whole ecosystem of support through storytelling. I love it.
And we have to remember the diversity of women's experiences. The report emphasizes the need to amplify the voices of women from marginalized communities, including women of color, LGBTQ+ women, and women with disabilities.
It's about ensuring that the movement for gender equality includes and represents all women.
You got it. And it's about pushing back against those narratives that pit women against each other. Things like the mommy wars, or the idea that there's only one right way to be a feminist.
We need to celebrate the fact that women make different choices and that we all have different paths to empowerment.
And I think that's a good place to take a break for now.
Mm-hmm.
We've covered a lot of ground in this part of our deep dive.
We have. I'm really interested to hear what the report says about the future of International Women's Day and what a truly gender-equal world would look like. Okay, we're back and ready for the last part of our deep dive into this IWD 2025 report. We've covered so much already. History, women's health, the digital world, even the pushback against the movement for gender equality. Now I want to look ahead. What does the report say about the future, like the future of International Women's Day itself?
Well, it's less about predicting the future and more about envisioning what a world with true gender equality could actually look like. And honestly, it's both really inspiring and kind of intimidating because, achieving that vision means a huge shift in mindsets and structures and pretty much everything.
Okay, so paint me a picture. What's the big, bold vision here? What would a world where IWD is almost, obsolete even actually look like?
I don't think it's about IWD becoming irrelevant. It's more about those core values, rights, equality, empowerment, those becoming so normal, so deeply ingrained in society that we don't even need a special day to highlight them. Just imagine leadership positions across every sector actually reflecting the diversity of humanity. Women and men equally represented in government, business, science, everywhere.
I'm picturing those boardrooms and political summits looking a lot different,
Yeah.
but it's more than just representation at the top,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
The report talks about a future where caregiving is shared equally between men and women. Like, no more assuming that childcare or taking care of elderly parents automatically falls on women. Imagine fathers taking paternity leave, men actively involved in household chores. It's about breaking down those old gender roles that hold everyone back, really.
I love that. It's about freeing men from those limitations, too. And what about everyday life? Our communities, schools, even just walking down the street? How does that change in this ideal future?
The report talks about a culture of respect, starting from the ground up. Imagine walking down the street with no fear of harassment or catcalling. A world where girls and boys are raised with the same opportunities and expectations, where women's voices are heard and respected everywhere.
It's about changing those deep-seated attitudes and behaviors, but that's a huge cultural shift. How do we even begin to tackle something so ingrained?
Education is key, according to the report. Imagine school curriculums that actually promote gender equality, teach kids to think critically about stereotypes, and build empathy. Teaching boys about consent and healthy masculinity, girls about their rights and leadership potential starting young.
That makes sense. Equip those future generations with the tools to change things. But what about the people who are already set in those old ways of thinking? Is there any hope of changing their minds, too?
The report acknowledges that change takes time, and there will always be resistance. But it really stresses the power of dialogue, finding common ground and showing how gender equality benefits everyone, like dismantling patriarchy. It actually frees men from those restrictive norms, too. It allows them to be more emotionally open, to be more involved fathers and partners.
So it's not about blame, it's about working together to build a better world for all genders.
Exactly. And the report suggests using storytelling and role models to help drive this change. Think about a world where media, entertainment, even advertising all portray diverse representations of women and challenge those harmful stereotypes. When young girls see women leading companies, doing scientific research, running for office, it opens up their own possibilities.
Seeing is believing, and I think that's something we can all contribute to, even in small ways. Whether it's supporting women-owned businesses, calling out sexist language, or mentoring girls, every action makes a difference.
Absolutely. And the report reminds us that IWD isn't just a one-day thing. It's a call to action for the whole year.
It's not about checking a box or posting on social media. It's about really living these values every day in our work, our relationships, everything.
Exactly. Showing up for gender equality everywhere, no matter how small the action might seem.
This deep dive has been so insightful. It's given me a lot to think about and even more to act on. To everyone listening, as we approach International Women's Day 2025, let's make it more than just a celebration. Let's use it as motivation, as a reminder to challenge those outdated norms, lift up those diverse voices, and work towards a truly equal world.
Well said. Change starts with each and every one of us.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.